Hello Summers and welcome back to another Pro Guides video. My name is Nathan Ng and today we'll be talking about our predictions for the 15 most broken champions on patch 11.22. One of the most important things in a constantly evolving game like League of Legends is to be able to adapt with the meta. And that's why we're here for you. If you want to know what's going to be OP before the patch even hits, you'll be ready to hit the ground running without even having to test out if the buff or nerf really made that much of a difference. And if you don't know how to play any of these OP picks, or you're just a little bit rusty, this will give you a few days to brush up on them in some normals or on a smurf. Before we get started, I just want to say that this list is not in any particular order. It's just a list of champions that we think are going to be some of the strongest, most influential picks on this patch. We'll start things off in the top lane with a champion that everybody loves to hate, Camille. Riot did a decent job of nerfing bruisers that use Gore Drinker and Conqueror on patch 11.21, but that actually made Camille more broken than she already was, since most of her competition in the top lane fell into that group of champion. I'd call it an oversight, but Camille has been broken for the majority of the season and hasn't received a meaningful nerf the entire time. So I think they're just maybe turning a blind eye at this point. Whether you're trying to learn to abuse broken champions on this list or how to deal with them when you just end up on the wrong side of the matchup, if you really want to speed up the process, you should check out ProGuides.com. We have courses from all your favorite pros and streamers like Core JJ, Afremu, and Xsmithy to really help you understand how to play your role. And if you want a more personalized experience, we have coaches available 24/7 to really help you become the best. Our coaches are top tier players that have spent years climbing the solo queue ladder, so they're ready to share everything that they've learned with you. So stop spinning your wheels on your own and get on the fast track to higher elo today. Now let's get back on topic, shall we? A top laner that's a little bit newer to the meta is Poppy. She's always been a tank that counters mobile bruisers pretty well, but this season, those bruisers have been so OP that they could just consistently perform even if you did bash them in lane as Poppy. Now that most of them have been brought down a notch or two, winning lane as Poppy means a lot more. They don't just get a scale for free, and you can outcarry them both as a side laner and a team fighter. Another plus with Poppy is that now you can atomize a little bit more damage heavy if you want, going for items like Divine Sunderer and Titanic Hydra over a standard full tank build. I guess this is one way to get hammered, you know what I'm saying? I don't really condone drinking. Anyway, our next pick for the OPs this patch is Draven. The bot lane meta has been pretty sailed this season, with the top tier picks ruling for months at a time. And at the moment, he seems like the most OP of the S tier ADCs. Yeah, he's a little bit more feast or famine since you rely on cashing in stacks, which means you need at least a decent support and jungler, but his carrying potential once he gets the ball rolling is insane. He's one of the only ADCs that can actually go toe-to-toe with bruisers, being able to heal through their damage while mowing them down, so you don't always need a support to peel and protect you. Not all OP champions are OP all the time. Our next pick, Rell, falls into that category. You don't just want to pick her up in every single game. She has a lot of CC, but isn't necessarily the best engaged champion in the game. Instead, she does best as a counter engager, going in when the enemy team tries to make their move. You can very easily turn what may be a good fight for the enemy into an easy win as you set your team up for an instant wombo combo. Urgot is another champion that has been indirectly buffed via most of the other top laners getting hit with nerfs. Since those champions are now a lot less likely to take an early lead and run the entire game with it, you can reach Urgot's insanely strong mid to late game more consistently and take over side lanes without much contest. The one thing about Urgot is that he is pretty kiteable in team fights, so you want to avoid those unless you have flash up. A really good example of how out of touch Riot is with things at the moment is the buff that we're seeing for the next entry, Kayn. Kayn has been incredibly dominant for many patches, but the second his win rate falls into the negative, they're instantly going to be throwing out a huge buff to him. And remember, these buffs are targeted at Rost. On the same patch that they're pushing out a pretty decent buff to Gore Drinker. The thing is, Rost is supposed to be a situational pick, not something that does just decent even in the worst of games. He should be really good when there are multiple tanky targets or I guess a weaker pick. But Riot doesn't see that, and there's a pretty good chance he's just going to be right back to the top of the S tier again. Another champion that's reaping in the rewards of the bruiser purge of 11.21 is Vladimir. He was already a good counter to assassins in the mid lane, but with the top lane champion pool being largely squashed, he became a really solid pick there. Vlad is a disgustingly strong late game champion, being one of the most absolute hardest carries once you make it there. So him being able to safely farm up and scale in either lane really puts him up there as one of the best solo queue champions in the current meta. Our next pick is Kennen. He's most popular as a top laner, but unlike Vladimir, the changes last patch weren't enough to actually make him good in that role. Instead, you should be abusing Kennen mid. As we pointed out in a few of our meta videos in the past few months, Kennen is just a monster against the assassins of the mid lane. If they go in for a trade, you just trade back even harder while stunning them and avoiding most of their damage. And in team fights, you have way more agency, as you can CC and nuke the entire enemy team, them included. Another champion remaining as an OP yet underplayed pick is Singed. Since he got grievous wounds slapped onto his ultimate, Singe has been an absolute monster. But that kind of makes sense given how much healing there is in Season 11. What's interesting about Singe is that he doesn't just do well as a top laner. His mid lane stats are kinda crazy. In fact, he does a lot better in mid than he does top lane. For one, I guess it's a lot harder for champions that normally get played in the mid lane to actually trade with him. At least bruisers can come out on top of extended fights if they play it right, and they usually have sustain via their kit or itemization. But assassins just lose out in all the trades against them, and can't really do anything to contest them by pushing the wave with his poison. He's then able to use his lane priority to go for a roam, which can very often result in a kill since he should have a predator. A lot of our discussions about Conqueror and Gore Drinker nerfs have been centered around top lane, but that isn't the only role that was impacted. Most top tier junglers also ran that setup, and the nerf means that assassins like Evelynn now have risen up as OP picks. Evelynn's weakest point is of course her very early game. Pre-6 not having stealth makes it nigh impossible to pull off ganks unless the, enemy team is shoving into the towers and giving the kills over for free. But with early bruisers like Lee Sin and Xin Zhao taking big hits with the system nerfs, Evelynn has a lot more breathing room. This means more consistently coming online before the map is totally in shambles, which in turn means that you'll be more consistently snowballing out of control and wreaking havoc in games. Remember, just pick up that Medjai's. Our next pick is Vayne. Like Draven, a lot of Vayne's success comes from her independence. Yeah, she's a hyper carry, but she's not one of those vulnerable glass cannons like Jinx or Kog'Maw that need constant babysitting to be able to play the game. Her tumble and condemn are enough to outplay most lane opponents in 2v2s, and she has early damage to actually be aggro in the laning phase. And later on into the game, those tools, in conjunction with her ultimate giving her stealth, makes her able to duel even the strongest of opponents. And then there's her true damage. Even the strongest of hyper carries struggle to deal with huge meat walls running at them in the mid-game fights. They usually need 5 or 6 items to be able to shred tanks, but with Vayne, as soon as you have Ginsu's, you're able to melt whatever stands in your way. Looks like I'll try lucking in Vayne myself because I want to melt your hearts or something. The other broken ADC on this patch is Misfortune. While she may not be as adept at dealing with big threats in 1v1 situations like our other two marksmen, MF definitely does have her selling points. 2, actually. For one, she's the strongest laner out of any of the ADCs. And she's not just strong, she also is incredibly easy to play, which is number 2. So you can win 2v2s very easily and very consistently with her. You can swap up her runes and builds to go even harder on the early game with Arcane Comet and a lethality build. And in teamfights, you don't even have to get near the danger. Just post up for a good ultimate and let it rip. Like I said, the bot lane meta has felt very rigid this year. For the very first part of Season 11, lethality ADCs like Jhin and MF were good, and then Jinx, and now it's been Vayne for some time, and more recently Draven and MF. When only 5 champions in the role for an entire year come to mind, it just seems pretty stale to me. At this point, I don't care how badly they overtune a champion, I just want to see some more diversity. And that brings us to today's question of the day. Which champion would you like to see become OP to shake up the meta? Let us know your answers down in the comments below. I'll tell you which one I don't want to see OP that has probably and will probably shape up the meta is Teemo. Like, Riot. Come on, Riot. Anyway, let's get back to the video, shall we? Like Evelynn earlier, Shaco, our next pick, is another champion that is really happy with all the bruiser nerfs that has happened. Not too many people really play tanks, so less bruisers generally means squishier opponents, and squishier opponents means more targets that he can one-shot. He'll snowball just as easily as he has early game, but now you'll feel like you're on the less of a timer, since half of the champions of the game aren't super durable, yet high damage duelist, bruiser, assassin tanks. That's a lot of roles in one champion, but 200 years, right? Our next pick is Blizzcrank. He made this list again and again simply because of how the rest of the meta is going. When nearly every popular support is a squishy enchanter, Blizzcrank is a perfect pick. Hitting a hook in lane is basically a guaranteed kill, and with the right ADC, that usually means that you'll snowball very hard and very fast. Support meta aside, Blitzcrank is just generally a good solo queue wildcard pick. You can go an entire game without making a pick and then hit one hook in the late game and that just kind of decides the game. Finishing off our list, we have Katarina. Kat's been the scourge of my existence pretty much forever. So seeing her as one of the top performing picks in the mid lane for a majority of the season hasn't really been fun for me. She has extremely high kill potential against people that don't really know how to play around her daggers. And apparently most mid mains have never seen a Katarina in their life, so it's more often than not that you see a Katarina get first blood at level 2 or 3. And when she has this very small lead, apparently, it can seem like the game will fall apart very, very fast. She roams to a river fight and gets double buffs. She's diving bot lane and gets a double kill. Teamfight at Dragon, there's a quad, and then the game's over. And I said quad because you don't die from her, because you watch ProGuides. So, and that about wraps things up for our predictions for the 15 most broken champions on patch 11.22. If you guys enjoyed the video, if you did, be sure you sub so you never miss out on any content like this. Remember, let us know what champion you'd like to see get some huge buffs down in the comments below. And one last thing, don't forget to check out our Discord in the description box below, where you can discuss League further or just hang out and be part of the community. I can't wait to see you guys back in the next video, but until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and everybody, have a wonderful day. Peace.